Hello, Chris Loizu here, as part of the Cursed Empire design team, and today, in this episode, we're going to be looking at character creation. So, obviously a big part of any role-playing game, and Cursed Empire is no exception. So, here we go. We're just going to have a look at the look into the what's involved. So, obviously, it's a big part of any role-playing game. When you get to choose the kind of character you're going to craft, you're going to build, and we've tried to really, in how we put this together, make this as user-friendly as possible and give a lot of choices to players to really craft the characters they really want to play. So there's a series of considerations in putting together a character. Obviously, the character name. We have naming conventions, so there's guidelines as to how to name characters. Also, you have race and kind of obviously you're belonging to a certain order, your gender, religion in the game as well, occupation, your fears and phobias if they exist, things you're born to do, favoured weapons you may have, personality traits, physical traits you may have. It could be scars, could be tattoos, it could be some rather strange coloured hair, for example, and also your core attribute is your mind and mysticism, which I touched on in the previous episode, and then your skill sets, your knacks and equipment and so on. The other four considerations, which are really, really crucial in crafting a character, are the childhood you had, the upbringing you benefited from or not, maybe, the occupation you have, and the order you belong to, if you belong to an order. And these four different layers, as they come into play, will give you a lot of different variants as they bring in different attributes and skills and add to the character archetypes that you have in the beginning of the character creation. And then you also have points you can spend on certain skills. So one of the first things is down to the races in the game itself. There's kind of three human race types, which are the Condorians, the Mandorians, and the Aldanians. So the Condorians are, generally speaking, very, very physically strong humans they're actually, as are most races you can play in Cursed Empire, they are the result of the Thargians, and we'll be covering the Thargians in another episode. The Thargians, who were a very powerful dominant race in the past, the history of Thargos, before their huge decline. But they actually were very powerful in terms of their magic capabilities, and they also carried out a degree of genetic manipulation. And in fact, a lot of the races were created or adapted to suit certain things required by their civilization. So Condorians were very much considered to be the ideal candidates for bodyguards, for security, let's say, units or personnel, but also some of the military units as well for the Thargians. And Mandorians are more a mix in terms of their bloodlines, and they have there's a degree of elvish blood, Mandorians, but not really very dominant, and they tend to be physically less strong. Once again, I say tend to be; these are not categories, and it's not binary. They tend to be less physically strong because they tend to be involved in. They were scribes, they were librarians, they were involved in some of the more intellectual tasks, administrative tasks of Thargian society, and that's kind of been designed by design that was the case. So you tend to find in Cursed Empire today that Mandorians are more involved in those types of activities, and even today will be sorcerers and mages and so on. Aldanians are very much kind of half elf, half human as a race, and they tend to be a kind of good combination of physical prowess and agility and speed, combined with intellect and local knowledge, often of the wilderness or the outdoors. And they tend to, once again, there's a tendency to be good being trackers and the like, but also have a bit of reputation because a lot of the guild members in the criminal underworld are Aldanians. So, kind of as a player choose to be Aldanian, you're already tainted slightly, already tarred with the same brush, unfairly in many ways, but it's just a reputation they have. So it's a choice a player makes. Then you have and the elves. You have noble elves, and they are a direct crossbreeding of bloodlines between the humans and the Condorians, in fact, and elves, wood elves, and they are often they make up a lot of the bulk of noble elvish families, notably in the city of Mengelia, but also other regions around there, and they are pretty physical in stature. They're not your thin, lithe elves. They're quite stocky. Actually, quite stocky individuals, slightly less pointed ears, but they are of elvish descent mainly. And then you have the wood elves, who are really the kind of original wild elves, and this was very much not really a spin-off, but not really of the Thargians' design, and they are more akin to other fantasy elf types you would find in other settings, other games, and they've struggled a lot. A lot of them have been wiped out by the Kadra, Black Orc, and so on. So they are struggling and diminishing race on the continent. Then you have, in the dwarves, you have so dwarves, once again, this is completely by design, taking the kind of bloodlines of humans, and then the Thargians required miners and required powerful, strongly built miners to obviously extract ore from their different mines. And the smaller you are, the stockier you are, the less simply the less high passages you need and galleries you need, so you can actually delve quicker and faster from that point of view. And they are from the northern dwarves, because they were mainly located in the north of the continent. They also, other splinter derivative orc races then were spawned, and they have the Darvan, and the Darvan are very much cave dwellers, deep caves in the south, and pretty evil. So they have a real reputation, Darvan dwarves, and a very bad reputation in the Empire. So once again, if a player chooses to be a Darvan, and noticeably so, their traits are slightly different. You do have paler eyes, and their night vision is even better than the normal dwarves, but they have a very, very bad reputation. Then you have the Durgs, and Durgs are there's two main groups of the Durgs. You have the Faldor, and the Faldor are anything really a player wants to have in terms of physical features, because they can range from very small elvish type folk through to taller, human-sized adult characters, but with pointed ears, facial features, slightly deformed sometimes. They are very much a spin-off. They are not a Thargian design. They are a mingling of elvish and dwarf bloodlines. So, and a bit of human there as well. So there's a real mishmash of different races there in those for those characters. And then you have the Nurkar, and the Nurkar are the very much Darvan inspired, or Darvan variant of the Faldor Durgs, and they are pretty brutal and don't have a good reputation at all, because they really are. They're often involved in assassin guilds and darkened factions and so on. And the Nurkar have, once again, you can't always tell them apart. So this is some of the fun aspect of the game, and you can really play on that. So the Durgs give players a lot of latitude to kind of choose the physical description they want with less constraints that the other races may give them. So that's really for the races, and then you have, as you'd expect in terms of the kind of professions, occupations, you have anything, and I won't go into a whole list here at this stage. We'll be sharing, obviously, pages of the book, but all your kind of warrior type occupations, from squires to knights to barbarian warriors to sniper archers to you name it. There's a huge amount of variety there. You have other types of occupations such as merchants and and thieves and assassins, and also you have priests, mages. There's a whole variety of different occupations there. There's also an optional table in the game where you also can roll your place of birth, and that also has an impact on some of your background. You can be an imperial character, so fighting for the empire, but you could be born in a southern city, and that can add some interesting background. You may have some connections to the south which you don't really want to share, or don't want people to find out about, maybe not even know about sometimes. That's quite a fun aspect. In terms of once you've chosen the race of the character, then you obviously looking at the kind of background path of the character, and I mentioned the childhood, the upbringing. These are all important aspects. So you could choose to be, your character could have been an orphan, and the upbringing was very harsh and quite secluded and quite protected, or quite isolated from the outside world, and that will impact how you see things and how you behave. That aspect is quite a fun aspect of the game as well, and how you mix and match these different 4 different categories of occupation, order, childhood and upbringing. And then you get into, obviously, in terms of the points build, the skills you have. So there are some standard skills that come like a skill pack for each of those different 4 categories, but then you can spend skill points where you want. So we tend to recommend, but once again, these are only recommendations, and we don't like imposing anything. It's not the way we run games. But we tend to recommend, max out a couple of your skills. You really stand out in those specific fields as a master marksman, or a fantastic acrobat, or an extra swordswoman, an excellent war swordswoman. If you spread them too thin, then you're going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, and that can be a bit of a hindrance when you're playing. But it's a personal choice again. So there's a skill build, the skill point spend, and as we go through these different layers of character creation, there's a lot of content there. I think there's only 100 pages in that chapter. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's also a quick character generation variant, which really can knock up a character within minutes, and that was the idea, to get playing straight away, and not have to go read through all the reams and reams of paper. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and visuals and artwork and background and lore, but you can fast track all that as well with a quick character generation. What else to be said in terms of that? I think from my perspective, I think one of the biggest parts of this is the story path, is the literally mapping that out, and we provide a sample story path where you can actually see the impact of certain events in the formative years of a character's life. So we actually map these out in a graph, and you can kind of see where certain events, certain successes, certain big achievements, or certain terrible losses have impacted that character. And in our case, it was a character called Vendar, who's a Condorian Imperial Knight. And just to give you a bit of background, just to give you a sample, you'll see this obviously in the visuals at a later stage, but we have a series of events from A through to J, in alphabetical order. So at event A, at age 5, moved to the farmland north of Condor to farm the land, also known as the Happy Years for Vendar. Age 9, he lost both his parents and to barbarian raids. So barbarian raiders came across the land and obviously attacked their land, and he lost his parents. Age 12, he entered the service as a squire of the local lord. So that taught him a degree of order and respect and sense of duty. And sadly, again, more tragedy. This is another low point, age 15, still a very, very young age. The local lord dies in a border skirmish with the Kandar, a pretty primitive, brutal race, which we'll cover in the bestiary. Not very nice creatures at all. And age 18, basically all the titles and the land transferred to Vendar as a sole heir of the Lord. So basically, the Lord had the a reveal to the player, or in this case, this character would be, the Lord actually had intentions to adopt the youngster. Age 22, Vendar's closest friend and bannerman, Grandor Wolfsbane, dies in a clash with the Kadra warband on the Plateau of Dread, another northern, rather wild region in the north of the continent. Age 26, Vendar learns the best weapons master in Kondar, so suddenly that age he's gone really into the heart of the Imperial war machine. Kondar is a massive militaristic Imperial city to the north, and has the best weapons masters in the Empire. So the fact he's been trained by their best weapons masters at age 26 is going to have a huge impact on the character. And age 28, he then sets out and joins the Black Falcon's Order in Celestia. So then joins a Knight Order. It's another highlight of his existence. And age 29, his lands are raided in his absence by bandits, and they are repelled and destroyed. Age 30 is present day. So, and actually what we do, we represent this on a graph. So you have the highs and lows, you have a median point where, and you have the positive impact, the negative impact, and actually having fleshed that out, even visually, is really fantastic for the player and the Master of Tales to be able to visualize that and kind of see and understand how those different events have impacted that individual's life and make him who he is at the moment of starting a campaign or a game. So we really recommend, I mean, this is going to kind of deep character creation, but certainly I recommend, and the team recommends, spending that time. It's a unique moment to really craft, and it is crafting your character and making something you really want to play, a character you really want to get into, you really want to play. Obviously, ideally, they don't die in the first gaming session, but the idea is to really invest the time and effort into doing that, and that can be very, very rewarding indeed. And then from there on, as you continue the role-playing sessions, you can then continue that graph and that story path, and you can punctuate that with the different steps, different highs and lows of that character's life. And it's just a great way of kind of keeping a log and a diary of what's happened and remembering. And I go back to the previous episode, a kind of memorable aspect of the game, and just to keep a visual journal that's really straightforward and quick. You know, we went from A to J, and then you got obviously the letters that follow after that. And you have the events all the way through to the death of the character, and then you have a full log, almost like Captain's log. So yeah, so it just really is a nice aspect to the game. We really recommend. And then of course, like anything, once the character's been created, then you want to equip them. So then you're looking at the gear you get them as well. They may inherit something, maybe in terms of their background. They actually inherited more gear than you normally start out with. That can be something you can obviously, the Master of Tales can then discuss that with you as well and make that happen as well potentially. So anything that adds depth and uniqueness to the character is going to be a huge plus, and we find that is always a really appreciable of different players. Yeah. So what else to say in terms of character creation? As I said before, those four choices: the childhood upbringing, order, and yeah, I mean, and the race. Obviously, all those different aspects of the character are really crucial to building that character. And then you have skills, all the skill sets. Well, there's a whole other episode on skills. We have a stack of skills in the game, and they really enable you to, once you've chosen those different events that have impacted your early formative years, it just has another dimension altogether when you actually have that aspect as well. Of the skills, and you could be, there's a reason you're very, very good at rock climbing, or you're very good at, telling stories or tales, or you also have another aspect, which this is worthy of almost another episode, but the notion of fears and phobias. Now, this is also another key aspect of this, and you can. We also have a sanity point mechanic, which for me has always been part of Cursed Empire. It was going to be in third edition, it just had to be, because it's been in first and second editions, and it's a huge part of the role-playing game. for us, because you're experiencing very traumatic events, and they do impact things in a big way. So having the sanity point tracking and it is another key aspect of this to be considered. So traumatic experience is a big part of it as well, and it can really affect provide additional framework or references to impact role-playing sessions, and a lot of fun. And of course, then it ups the tension again. So here we are, recurring. You can see the kind of recurring loop here, a game loop, that all these things still drive tension, still drive the epic nature of things, and the risk you're taking. And I may take this action, but it may impact my sanity, it may impact my mental well-being, my mental health. And it's also, I think, personally, is a theme we certainly shouldn't trivialize or shy away from either. The notion of mental health. So I think having that in there, there's also a serious element to that as well, which I think is good to have in there. And it can even provide some excellent discussion points after a gaming session, and role-playing games tend to do that. Certainly the ones I've been part of or run. But yes, and phobias, fears and phobias, sworn enemies as well as another one, who your sworn enemies, and once again, that also just flesh out the character a little bit more. The fact you have a scar on the side of your face, and there's a reason why, and then there's a person who did that to you, and you really can't stand them, and that's in your background. You start the campaign, you start the gaming sessions, even better equipped to have a really fantastic time. And just the effort the players put into creating those characters should be kind of rewarded in terms of how things are run, but also it just automatically sets the scene. I talked earlier on the previous episodes about setting the scene. As a Master of Tales, what I do, I literally, set up the scene, the stage is set, and then let the players really roleplay and kind of drive the narrative and the pace of the narrative, the pace of the scenario. I really love that side of things. And when players put so much into their character creation, so much personal choice, and the kind of crafting side of things, and then building that character and fleshing it out and breathing life into it, it's just phenomenal. It's just fantastic, a fantastic creative process, but also all those combinations of input from the different participants. You're suddenly in a totally different place, and that also adds to the immersive nature of certainly our gaming sessions and Cursed Empire, having that depth of character creation. So I've not got into the guts of the mechanics and the choice of attributes and the skill numbers and all this stuff. We can do a different session going through a character sheet, but at the moment I think it was more important for us to kind of define the concepts, the core concepts behind character creation, the core considerations. A lot's gone into this, and the previous editions also had a lot of work put into them, but I think what we have here is a good balance. You still have the depth and the richness, but we've taken out a lot of the crunch, and hopefully that's going to help people make some really cool characters. So on that note, end of my ramblings again, another session. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in and for listening, and look forward to the next episode. Thank you. Bye for now.